Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be discussing whether or not you can get a decent pocket knife from Amazon. Now, you'll probably recognize that most of the knives out on the table right here are imported, meaning they are not made in the USA, making them significantly cheaper than a lot of other pocket knives that I review on this channel. Just wanted to do this to kind of appeal to some people who maybe aren't looking to spend, over $100 on a pocket knife. And generally the decent ones that are made in the USA are gonna run you about $100 or more, with some exceptions, but generally, you're going to be paying a lot more for knives that are made in the USA. So if you don't really care about that, this video is for you. If you do, you don't need to pay attention. I generally don't talk about imported knives too much on this channel, but I do own a handful of them, and they are actually very well-made knives. So that's just something that I prioritize when I'm looking to purchase a pocket knife, whether or not it's made in the USA, but I understand that not everybody does that. So we'll jump right into it here. We have the Spyderco Tenacious. Spyderco has presence in the USA. They have factories all over the world: Italy, Japan, Taiwan, China, and Golden, Colorado in the States. We have Kershaw, who also has a presence in, I believe, Taiwan, China, and America. They might have some other factories in other locations as well, but I do know that they have been an American company for a long time that does just outsource a lot of their labor. We have CJRB Pyrite, which is a purely Chinese company, and we have the Fintiso Cobra here. Full disclosure here, I did receive this from Fintiso. They sent me this pocket knife, so I'm going to be unbiased. I'm not going to grant that any favors whatsoever. I'm going to be talking about all these, saying things I like, saying things I don't like. So again, not shilling for Fintiso. I appreciate them sending this to me, but I want you to know that I'm gonna criticize it as well as say some things that I do like about it. So we'll jump right in talking about him here. We'll start with the Spyderco Tenacious, probably one of the most well-made imported knives that I have ever owned, and that's probably what you come to expect if you have ever owned a Spyderco before. Spyderco does not miss when they make a knife. Doesn't matter where in the world it is. The Tenacious is an awesome knife. It has some flaws, but overall, I think it's probably about 60 to 70 bucks now, depending on the kind of model that you get. They have a million different kinds, a million different steels. They have G10, so it's full liners, as you can see on here. And this is the plastic FRN scaled version. They also have a G10 version that's also full liners. They might have an aluminum version, I'm not sure, but there's tons of aftermarket support for this. You can get scales and pretty much whatever you want. Obviously, I've just left the plastic factory stock ones on here, but they also make it in a bunch of different steels. This is just the generic, I think it's 8 CR 13 MOV. So just a budget steel, nothing crazy, but it sharpens up really, really nicely. You can kind of see the edge on there, just how nicely it takes an edge, which is awesome. Because a lot of times cheaper knives, well, I say cheaper, obviously it's not that cheap, but cheaper knives, meaning the $10 Harbor Freight knives or Walmart knives, will struggle to take an edge when you go to sharpen them. So it's nice to know that a lot of these imports can be sharpened very, very well, and they do a decent job at holding an edge. As you can kind of see again, I tend to beat up on this one a lot. There's a lot of scratches on the blade. There's a lot of mud and stuff that I kind of tried to clean out of the scales, which it looks pretty nice now, but it was in rough shape for a little while. But you can also take this apart, put it back together, which is generally a sign that a knife is somewhat well made if you can take it apart and put it back together and it still functions. So not the case for a lot of the Ozark Trail knives, especially the ones that are $5 or $10 at a gas station or Walmart or Home Depot or wherever you may get them. And that's not a knock against those knives. They have their place. But once you step up a tier and you're paying for something a little more, it's nice to know that you can disassemble and reassemble it, clean it with no issues whatsoever. So the Tenacious is a great knife. I really wish that it was not a liner lock. If this was a compression lock and made in the US, it would be my absolute #1 knife of all time. I don't think there would be anything that would come close to it. Having a compression lock without the forward choil, meaning this right here, this forward finger choil that takes up so much of the room on the blade, would be absolutely incredible. So if this, again, had that compression lock on the back, made in the USA, I think it would be awesome. I don't really care about the steel. The steel works for me, but I think it is an awesome knife. Great size, great shape. They make a bunch of, I think it's the Persistence is like the smaller version of this. There's another one that's bigger. So the Tenacious, I think, is right in the middle. And I'm sure they're all great knives. But again, that liner lock is just Because it's exposed here, you see, I always get worried when I'm gripping down that I'm gonna accidentally disengage the lock and it's gonna shut on my hand. There's no flipper tab or anything to stop that from happening. So that is a worry of mine. I also don't think it's really necessary to have the full liners. To have the nested liners kind of in something like, I guess this isn't a great example, but the Shaman, you can see there's nested liners, so you can't really see them. That's not a great example, but that's all I have laying around with me right now. I think that would have cut down on the weight on this a little more, and I don't really think the full liners are necessary. It might make it a little more expensive, so maybe that's why they did it, but I think that it's a pretty heavy knife considering it is just plastic over the full liners, which again, you can get G10 or I think aluminum, and it's still pretty nice. So it's a great knife. It's on the pricier side of the ones we have here. Again, I want to say these are upwards of 60 to 70 bucks. So we're kind of going to go down in price, so they're only going to get cheaper from here. But that is on the pricier end for a budget imported knife on Amazon. That's popular on Amazon. And you can get all these anywhere. I think maybe these two, the CJRB and Fintiso, are not at your standard Blade HQ, Smoky Mountain Knife Works specific knife retailers. Maybe they are, and I just haven't ever shopped there for them, but I know all these are on Amazon and they're frequently bought on Amazon. So next up we have the Kershaw Iridium, which is an awesome knife done by Kershaw. Again, company with presence in the United States. This one, however, is made in China. It's got D2 steel, it's got aluminum scales, and it's got the crossbar lock that seems to be taking over the entire market right now. Everybody's making a crossbar lock. A lot of these foreign companies are trying to get in on the crossbar lock game now that Benchmade does not have the single rights to their axis lock anymore. So becoming super popular, and for good reason. It's a great locking style, super durable. I mean, again, you can see the way it works. If you don't know, this crossbar, this little lock bar right here, it's kind of hard to see on a blacked out knife, but that disengages and then re-engages over the top of the knife with some springs inside there, and that prevents the knife from closing, basically, because there's nowhere for the lock bar to go. It's kind of just locked in place. So it is a really, really nice locking system. It has a flaw, which are the springs that seem to break on a lot of models. However, again, Benchmade seems to be one of the few companies that has a consistent problem with that. I've never really heard of anybody breaking springs on an Iridium, but they also haven't been around that long. So that could be why. But great knife. It does feel a little bit, I don't know what the right word is. It's a little bit loose compared to, again, just your axis lock. And again, there's a massive price difference there, so that's probably why. Plus, Benchmade's been doing it for way longer. But the lock bar feels to be just smoother and more in place and sturdy than the Duralock, which is Kershaw's axis lock, crossbar lock. So it kind of has that grindy, maybe not so sturdy feeling. And it just feels a little bit off. That's kind of just the best way I can put it. Not necessarily bad, it's just very different than a lot of other axis locks, and it doesn't feel as tough. That being said, again, I've used this, have not had any problems with it. The coating on the blade is held up fairly well. I haven't, again, compared to the Tenacious and the Pyrite, I've not really used this that much just because I haven't had it as long, so I haven't really got a chance to beat up on it a lot, but the coating has held up well for just the stuff that I've used it for. And I don't know if it's DLC, I don't know exactly what it is, but it does not feel like a Cerakote, so that's probably a good sign that it'll be pretty durable. The steel is a little bit tricky to sharpen, it's D2. I don't know how it's heat treated, but it seems to be very sharp and sharpen well. Just a little bit time consuming to sharpen like a lot of D2s are, and that's a pretty common steel that's used overseas. So not bad. Another thing that's kind of off about the Iridium is it's very slippery. These smooth aluminum scales just get really, really slippery whenever they get wet. And so that's something that I've kind of struggled with a little bit if I'm using it under running water, and it wants to slip out of your hand. So that's a little bit difficult. There's a tiny bit of jimping on the front here that you can choke up on, but I probably would have liked to see that a little bit more on the spine of the knife. Overall, great knife. It's the pocket clip on this one is decent. I forgot to mention that on the Tenacious too. It just has the standard Spyderco pocket clip. I use that on some knives, some I don't. Some I take it off on. I don't know, just kind of random. I'm not a pocket clip guy, but both of these have nice pocket clips. I like both of them. I use both of them, and I think they're pretty nice knives. So Kershaw Iridium, I think they have the uncoated one, which is around 50 bucks or so, maybe a little more depending on where you get it. The blacked out one I think is just under 60, so they're kind of about $10-ish cheaper than the Tenacious, depending on again which model you get. So worth checking out. Kershaw also has some other great crossbar Duralock is what they call it, knives. And I actually have found, I've held it in a store, the plastic one, which the name is escaping me right now, but I will link it below, actually felt a lot more sturdy and smooth and durable and more like a true axis lock than the Iridium did. So I'll link that below. You can check it out. If you can find it at a local store and go hold both of them, that probably would be ideal, just so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. But if you don't have time to do that, you know, you can take my word for it or not. But I actually think the plastic one, which is cheaper, seems to feel a little bit better than this one. So cannot remember the name. I'm sorry. I'll link it below. I want to say it's the Heist, but that could be totally wrong. So don't don't hold me to that. I'll just read below and you can see what it actually is. Next up, we have the CJRB Pyrite, super popular knife among the knife influencer, like Blade HQ video, Knife Center video guys, and not for no reason. It is a very well made knife. The button lock works very well. CJRB has been around for, I think, a little while, making all kinds of knives, and this is one of their big models. I had an Amazon gift card like a year ago, and so I just bought one because it was on sale, and I actually think it's a pretty nice knife. It's got AR RPM 9 steel on it, so if you're like a super steel nerd guy, I think the Knife Steel Nerds website has some article detailing some issues with them calling it AR RPM 9 for some reason. I read it. I don't really remember a whole lot of what I read, to be honest with you, but there's some whole controversy with that. But the steel actually works very well. It is a pretty thin blade stock, as you can see. I don't have a bug out with me. Oh, I do have a bug out right here. So almost on par with that, if not even a little bit more thin than the bug out, which is pretty cool. So it's a very thin knife. It slices very, very, very well, and it gets really sharp because of, again, that thin profile. So you can see there's a very nice edge on there right now. It's really easy to sharpen. Which is, again, a lot of these knives that are going to be imports from Amazon, if they are above the just disposable knife level, like I talked about before, they will be very fun to sharpen, very nice to learn how to sharpen with. So that's maybe a selling point for them, but it's still pretty cool. There's a little bit of scratching going on this blade here. I've beat this thing up really bad. I've thrown it at trees, stepped on it, smashed rocks with it, and it has held up really well. It cleans up really well because of these aluminum scales. You can just wash everything off. They are like milled inside there, you can kind of see. So that takes the weight down a little bit, but there is some, when I was using it outside, there was some mud that built up in there, quite a lot of mud actually that built up in there. So I had to take it apart and put it back together, and it was really, really easy to actually do that. And it feels a little bit more smooth than it did beforehand. The one thing that I really, really don't like about this is the thumb studs. And I'm going to try and show this here. You can see the thumb studs are like sharp. And that is really annoying when you don't have gloves on. With gloves, it's not an issue at all. But I really, 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 really dislike the thumb studs on here. Just because it's poking right into your finger. They're kind of hard to use because it's so close to the handle. So it's a little bit tricky to get it out, but the action is pretty nice. I think the button on this is in a fairly nice place. I mean, some of them, I know the Spyderco Smock has a button that's like down here. So I like the fact that the button is higher up. I think this is a pretty nice knife. Again, the thumb studs are kind of a deal breaker for me. Other than that, it's really nice. Once you have the knife open and you don't have to actually open it and stab your thumb on the thumb studs, it is quite a nice knife. Again, the same thing with the Iridium, the smooth aluminum-ish steel, whatever. I think these are aluminum scales, just slide out of your hand. And this, honestly, more so than the Iridium, just because the Iridium is kind of chalky, and this is really, really smooth. So these almost feel like greasy when they get wet. It just really slips out of your hand. And there are a million models of this knife, the Pyrite. So if I was going to go back and get another one, I probably would not get the aluminum. I tend to favor aluminum over G10 or plastic or whatever else there is out there, just because I feel like it feels more durable to me. However, G10 has started to grow on me a little bit. So looking back, I probably would get the G10 version of that knife. But decent knife. Thumb studs suck, but other than that, the pocket clip, I always forget to talk about the pocket clips because I don't use them. This is a decent pocket clip too. It's got the flat screws, which is very nice. The retention is pretty good. Just standard knife pocket clip, nothing great, nothing bad about it. And finally, the Fintiso Cobra. Oh, sorry, the Pyrite, before I get onto this, the Pyrite I think is 50 bucks on Amazon. It goes on sale frequently though, so keep an eye out for that. I think I paid 40. There's the mini Pyrite, there might be the large Pyrite, but they go on sale. Prime Day is coming up in like a week, so keep an eye out for that. Keep an eye out for all these. They'll probably go on sale too there, but forgot to mention that. So we're going down again in price. Finally, the Fintiso Cobra. They sent this to me, so I want to be very clear about that. I mentioned that at the beginning, but I'm going to reiterate. They sent this to me. They just were like, you know, we'll send it to you. You want to test it, put it in a video. That's great. They didn't really tell me that I had to say anything good or bad. Nothing else to really say about that. So I had never heard of them. They started in 2022, also an imported knife made in China. A lot of their models bear some similarities to a lot of the Civivi models. I don't actually think I own any Civivis. I've had some and I gave them away to buddies a long time ago, but they look very similar to some of the Civivis. They have the similar branding on the pivot screw here, but you know, Civivi is a reputable import brand, and you know, they do a ton of sales on Blade HQ and Knife Center, and lots of people are happy with them. So for what it's worth, they're similar. I'm sure they're sister companies in one way or another. A lot of this stuff kind of is made in similar factories and whatnot, but I didn't really know what to expect when I got this, so opened it up, had never heard of it. Got this probably 2 weeks ago at this point, and just been playing around with it, using it a little bit day to day. I've been pretty busy, so I haven't really been going crazy with it, but first impressions were I cannot stand the handle shape. The handle shape I think is really weird looking, and I have been proven wrong fairly recently actually on weird looking handle shapes with the Tour Merchant. I always did not like the handle getting larger towards the back, if that makes sense. Kind of the Strider look. If you've ever heard of Strider knives, they get fat towards the back and kind of narrow as they get up to the blade. So I did not really like the look of that, but I got the Merchant and it actually is quite comfortable in the hand. This one I was willing to give a chance, and it just feels really kind of awkward in the hand because two of my fingers are farther forward than the back, and it closes around the back, so it's just a little bit odd. I also hate the milling on the back of this. When you don't have gloves on and you're trying to just play with this with the button lock, it really digs into your hand right here. And I'm a pretty tall guy, but I have small hands for my height. So I'm 6'4", but I have really small hands. So these are just medium gloves, medium hands. So I think that's just the average hand size. So it digs into the back of my hand here. For those that have bigger hands or smaller hands, maybe that's not an issue. But for a lot of people, I'm sure that is an issue. It just is poking right there. And it's almost sharp on here. They did a nice job contouring the scales, but the back of it is just so uncomfortable. And the last thing, well, two last things that I will bash about this knife before saying what I like about it. The pocket clip is atrocious. I don't know why it's curved like that. It has terrible, terrible, terrible retention, meaning it is almost impossible to put in and take out of your pocket because it is so tight. So maybe that'll loosen up over time, but I have no idea. Again, I'm going to take it off. I just wanted to show it for the video. I don't really like pocket clips, so that's not a deal breaker for me at all. And the absolute last thing that I don't really like about this knife is the hole. The hole sucks. It's very hard to use because the scales are pretty thick because it's full liner. So you have to like get your hand into it, like dig down and reach back around and get into it. And it's kind of hard to do that. So I wish the hole was either bigger or non-existent, either a thumb stud or non-existent. I think it kind of just, one, looks a little bit silly, and two, it's just not functional at all. It's, again, you have to come back and ride it up. Now for reverse flicking is not so bad, but I don't really ever do that unless I'm just making a video or playing with a knife, because it's not really ideal to lose half your grip on the knife when you're trying to use it. So there's that. But now we'll get into the stuff that I do like about it. I wanted to get that stuff out of the way to show you that I'm going to be, again, I'm going to criticize them. I'm not going to just shill for the company. This actually does feel like a very well-made knife. It feels on par with all these. It feels on par and comparable. I was going to originally do a video just against the CJRB Pyrite, but I thought, why not just throw some others in there and talk about them as well and give people some more options to look at. So on par with the Pyrite, both button lock knives, both very similar in quality. There's no wiggle in this. There's no wiggle in any of these. These are all, again, reputable knives, so no wiggle in this at all. And it came very sharp out of the box, which I was really impressed with. I always like when knives come sharp out of the box. I think that's a great feature of them. I don't know why I'd be paying money for a knife that's not sharp. That is the single reason that I am buying a knife, is to cut things, and you can't cut things if a knife is not sharp. So that always really, really annoys me when I'm paying very, very not insignificant amounts of money for a knife and they come dull out of the box. That's just unacceptable. So really happy with that. I actually like the blade shape, surprisingly. I thought it looked pretty ugly online, I'm not gonna lie, but I got it, and actually it's pretty cool. And there's some history there with the inspiration of the design. I cannot remember off the top of my head, but it was some based off some design that people used to use back in the day to, I think, harvest stuff in the Chinese culture. So pretty cool. It slices very well. I cut through that manila rope from another video that I did, and it sliced very, very well through that. So that was kind of, again, surprising. I don't know. I had no expectations for the knife, so I don't really know what I was going to expect, but that was pretty cool. The button lock is probably not as nice as the Pyrite, just because the Pyrite, I think, is maybe it's all aluminum around it or something. I don't really know why, but it seems to be a little bit more finicky than the Pyrite. But it is nice. Button lock's not my favorite mechanism. Just, again, a lot of American knives don't make manual button locks, so I don't have a whole ton of them. But it's a nice button lock. It works. It holds up very well. I spine whacked it. You see, works very well. I'm not faking that. That was probably a little loud, actually, for my neighbors and stuff, but it works. It's sturdy, no blade play, came very sharp. What more can you ask for a knife? What I would like to see is them probably round off this back here so it's not poking into me. And I think it actually would be a very nice knife. It is G10. I think they make, I cannot remember what the other one on Amazon is. I don't think it's carbon fiber, but I think they make a higher end model that uses some other handle material and different steel. This is 14C 28N steel. So again, just all these are just budget steels. That's why I don't really talk about them a whole lot. Easy to sharpen. I have not put a new edge on this yet, but I did strop it a little bit, and it was shaving sharp easily out of the box. It's one of the sharper knives that I ever got, which is always great. And the G10, I will give them credit for the G10. It resembles the Benchmade G10 on the tagged out, on the Adamas line. So it feels very, very nice, which I like. G10 has been growing on me recently just because of this slippery aluminum stuff, but milled aluminum is still probably my favorite handle material. But they did a nice job with the G10. I like the green and blue. I realized as I've been making some videos recently that a lot of my knives are green. I just never thought twice about that. It just so happens that like almost all the newer knives that I buy are green and stuff. So kind of funny that I realized that, but I do like the green color, this OD green color, and the blue accents I think are pretty nice. So overall, I mean, I think this is a decent knife. It's around 50 bucks. Again, these go on sale all the time because they're all on Amazon. So these are all going to be great value. Again, I don't really buy a lot of these knives despite the fact that they are made with quality parts, and you know they seem to perform very well and sharpen well and do all the stuff that you need a knife to do well. But the most important thing to me, again, I reiterate this all the time, is the fact that the knife is made in the USA. I take pride in carrying a knife that I know says USA on the side of it, made in the USA, by an American company. I think that's just something that, you know, I'm always proud when somebody asks me what I'm carrying, like, oh yeah, is that made in the USA? And I'm able to say yes. So I really like that. But again, that is not knocking these knives at all. They're all great. They all function very well. I'm pretty much on par with a lot of the more expensive knives that I have. So you're not going to go wrong with any of these. I know a lot of you don't like to spend a ton of money on knives, so that's who we're trying to reach with this video. If you have any other suggestions, there are a million knives out there that are in this like $50 price range that are imported. These are just some of the ones that I have and some of the ones that I find worth talking about. I have some other ones, but I didn't really want to include them in this just because I didn't think they were that worth talking about. But I promise you, you will not go wrong with any of these knives. I think they're great, and I don't think you'll be disappointed with them. So if you are, let me know. But I don't think you will be. So again, let me know what else in this price range you can buy in the comments. I will happily make the shopping easy for you. You can shop around, use the links in the description. Don't use them, I don't care, but you can look and find the knives, names and such, and I try to make it easy for everybody. So hopefully that's helpful. Let me know what you like. Let me know what you don't like. I really, really appreciate you watching. I appreciate you subscribing. I appreciate all the support. One last thing, I am trying to organize some collection of links for fundraisers for the people affected by the hurricane in the Carolinas, where I am, and Florida and Eastern Tennessee. So I'll get that to you in probably the next video that I do here. Whether that'll be posted around the same time as this, I don't know. But I'm gonna try and figure out what I can. It's a little bit murky, just to find information, find out exactly where to donate, what to do, information and such. But keep an eye out for that. Again, thank you for everything. I really appreciate it. And stay tuned for the next video.